if the thing that now feels like a movement was just one person making a different choice? Today's guest stopped drinking in 2007, before the alcohol free menus, before the mocktail programs, before anybody was really even talking about this. And instead of just changing her own life, she helped build an entire category around it. So today we're talking about what it looks like to see something early, to build around it, and where this alcohol free movement is actually going next. If you've stepped away from drinking or the things that used to numb you, you know it changes your life. But it changes the people watching you too. You become quiet proof that something better is possible. On Sober Life Rocks, we talk with people who realize that their choice wasn't just personal, it was a platform, a chance to be a leader, to shorten somebody else's learning curve, to do something that really mattered. If you felt that pull, you're in the right place. Subscribe and stay with us. I'm Margie Schaller, host of Silver Life Rocks podcast, and today's guest is truly a pioneer in this space. Laura Silverman is founder of Zero Proof Nation, a platform she built and launched back in 2019 to map and elevate alcohol-free beverage culture long before it became mainstream. She, as I mentioned, has been alcohol-free since 2007. She has served as a judge for the World Alcohol-Free Awards in London. She has led workshops, advised organizations, and has been recognized as a leader and innovator in the non-alcoholic beverage industry. But what I'm most interested in today is how she saw this path before most people did, and how she turned that into something that's now influencing an entire industry. Laura, welcome to the show.
Wow, Margie, that is quite the introduction. I'm very honored. Thank you so much.
But all true, and I can't believe that you're on our show. Thank you so much.
Oh,
So
my pleasure.
I want to take you back when you stopped drinking in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like back then? I mean, I got sober 2005, so I had my experience. But what was that
Yeah.
experience like for you at that time? Did it feel isolating, or like what was it like for you?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I had just come from, and certainly not to say that this should be normalized in any way, but a very sort of quote unquote normalized binge drinking culture. I was in college and did what a lot of college students do. I just took it to the next level. And the 2 years after
Overachiever.
I guess so, but not in the way that I wanted to be or should have been. I did maintain good grades, though, relatively good grades, and that's a miracle in and of itself. But the 2 years after college graduation got even worse, and so I just, long story short, knew that I needed professional help. It was not a matter of seeing role models around me that were drinking less or coming to any kind of sober curious decision or mindful drinking opportunities. It was nothing like that, because those things just didn't exist yet, or they weren't being talked about on any kind of scale. So all I knew in front of me was that I had been hospitalized twice for alcohol poisoning in less than 2 years, and I could not continue drinking again, quote unquote, safely. We know so many things about alcohol now that we didn't then. But I just needed to get it out of the equation entirely. And to me, that looked like giving up my social life. So it really felt like it was the death of one chapter of my life and the birth of another chapter. But I just had no idea where that new chapter was going to take me. All I was focused on is just not drinking until that became less at the forefront of my mind, and it just became a way of life. But it took a while to get there. So the first year, I don't even really remember. But interestingly, I do remember that first month, because I was in an intensive outpatient program, intensive treatment what do they even call them? IOP, intensive outpatient program. And it was a 5-week long program. And I remember progressing through it, feeling better and better that I was not waking up on the week, because I was a weekend drinker, not a daily drinker. but I was waking up without a hangover every every weekend. And it felt like something that I was finally starting to get a little bit of clarity in my life, which was promising, but I didn't think I would ever have fun again at the same time.
So
That's
I'd love
2007.
to just, yeah, and I'd love to touch into that because, we see all the statistics, right? That younger people are drinking less and less than they had ever before in our knowledge of history.
Mhm.
And yet, there are still people who, you know, they're young and they're in college or they're going out to the bars or whatever the thing is. Talk to me about how do you navigate creating a social life as a young person when that's been your circle of friends?
Yeah. Wow. Well, going back, gosh, it's almost been 19 years, which is essentially 2 decades since I stopped drinking. So it's really going back in the annals of my own history. But in the beginning, certainly in those first 6 months, I was not focused on creating a social life for me. I was focused on staying sober. And that was really the ultimate goal for me was in the beginning, certainly. Like, I think after those first 6 months, I was more comfortable in my sobriety. I was certainly by the end of the first year, I was like, this kind of just feels like my life now. I am
Mm.
a sober person. I don't drink alcohol. It felt more like an identity after that first year. But in that first year, I was trying to figure out how I could still be a 24-year-old, how I could be invited to things. And maybe I didn't want to be invited to things. And maybe it was a matter of actively making plans with my parents instead of my, former drinking buddies. And then it was also a matter of seeking solace in a couple of true friendships that I had. And I learned who my true friends were as well as I was going through this
Mhm.
process. Um, People who were willing to hang out with me without any alcohol around and just hang out and just kind of get to know each other or have, what's called like wholesome fun these days,
Yeah,
just
go bowling
go
or
bowling, go for a walk, like have a bite to eat
game
at a
night.
place. Yeah, like
Yeah.
literally anything. And I had a couple of friends that did that with me and for me, and I'm very grateful to those friends. But yeah, that first year it wasn't a very social year, and I think that's what I needed. Now, I also at the time had been going to AA because there were no other social outlets. And certainly there weren't any other kinds of uh, recovery pathways that were being talked about or that even existed at the time. I think smart recovery was around, but it was so sparsely located and situated in the states that I don't think there was anything locally in the Washington D.C. area. So I went to AA, and I'm grateful for those first couple of years going because I was around other people who got it, who understood what I had been through. But even then, like I just never fully felt like I belonged there, like it was my crew, or I had this sense as I put in more time in my own sobriety and as I put in more time going to meetings that this was like a chapter of my life that I was grateful to have and grateful to be in, but one that I was looking forward to closing and opening a new chapter, graduating from. And no one had ever talked about leaving. You can't,
Yeah.
it's like the Hotel California. You can check in, but you can't leave, or whatever the phrase is. So I kind of tapered my attendance back. I was building my own recovery patchwork anyway. I had a therapist. I was bettering my relationships. I was exercising more. I was trying to eat better. Reading a lot of Quit Lit before it was called Quit Lit. It was just they were just recovery memoirs, and I was on medication for some mental health conditions too, and all that together was my pathway, my patchwork, in addition to going to some meetings, but people
Yeah.
didn't seem to be okay with my sparse attendance. Or maybe that's just how I interpreted it, and they were more concerned about my well-being if they didn't see me around for a while. And that could have been their experience, that when you don't see someone around for a while, it means that they might have relapsed. But for me, it was just another part of my patchwork until it wasn't. And then I was faced with, about halfway through my sobriety, well, what do I do now? Who do I talk
Yeah.
to? Who's going to get it? Like, I definitely felt a lack of human connection in my own journey, because no one in my life understood what I had been through and understood in a way that could relate to me. And that was also isolating.
Yeah. So talk to me about, when did you start toying with the idea of what became Zero Proof Nation?
Well, I wouldn't have started that process if I didn't talk about my blog that does not exist anymore, but kind of launched me into the space of talking about sobriety out loud, talking about not drinking alcohol out loud. And that was in a blog that I had for 4 years called the Sobriety Collective. And it was all about sharing people's stories who are not anonymous, who chose not to be anonymous, and who identified as creatives, whether they were writers or comedians, athletes, musicians, anything really. If you created something, had any kind of artist, like if you had any kind of creative output, whatever that looked like for you, and you chose a substance-free lifestyle, those are the people that I wanted to highlight. And some of those people ended up becoming figures in the non-alc movement, which was not really a movement at that time. There were the beginnings of, like, rumblings of what could later be looked at in hindsight as, okay, that's the movement was starting. And some of those people include Ruby Warrington, who I interviewed in that blog. She coined Sober Curious and wrote a book literally called Sober Curious. I also was the first media outlet to cover Chris Marshall's story, and he's the founder of Sands Bar. Tawny Lara, who wrote Dry Humping. Wes Hurt, who founded a brand called Clean Cause in Austin, Texas, and that was and still is going. 50% of the profits or the proceeds go to recovery scholarships for people who are just getting out of treatment or who need treatment. And I was starting to interview some more people who would essentially later become those people that had built this movement together. So toward the end of my time, I kind of saw the Sobriety Collective as being something that could live on the internet, but I didn't have to really update it anymore. I wanted it to be a resource for people if they wanted that. Well, when I got laid off at the beginning of the pandemic, I really had to look at all of my costs. And I was like, well, I think I'm just going to take this down and keep this other website that I started in 2019. As a creative with ADHD, I was longing for a new project, longing for something new to do. And it was very much at that time that I started noticing there was something of a movement afoot, but it was very, very quiet. So I live in the Washington, D.C. area. In late 2018, I met two local entrepreneurs who still have beverage brands. One is Pauline Dogo. She runs Mocktail Club, which has national distribution now. And the other, Charlie Birkinshaw, he runs Element Shrub, which was a shrub company. And for those who don't know what a shrub is, I had to learn myself. It is a fruit and vinegar reduction that can then be used like as a syrup in drinks. You can use it in salad dressing, any kind of it goes really well with club seltzer, but or club soda, but there just weren't a lot of people in my life or people that I knew of that were starting beverage brands that did not focus on alcohol. And so as I was making those local relationships, I still had my friendship going with Chris Marshall. who back in December of 2017, whom I met online, but met later in person in 2018. And I was noticing at some of the restaurants near me, there might have been like a mocktail option, but there was something which in those days felt like a lot. It felt like a big deal. Now we know that one option is just not enough, but we'll take an option in 2018, 2019, if that's where we can get it. And so all of these things were percolating in my head, around me, in my life, where and in January, I should say in January of 2019, I, with Chris, threw the first Sands Bar DC. It was a pop-up. We did a pop-up in DC, and we ended up doing 3 different pop-ups over the course of the that next year in 2019 and early 2020, pre-government shutdown and everything shut down. And so there was enough going on that I realized maybe it's time to do what I did for the Sobriety Collective, but for this burgeoning non-alc movement, not knowing where it would go. Very soon after I started the website, I had an Instagram feed where I was featuring founders of these non-alcoholic beverages in a world that would tell them they'd make more money with booze. They're going out on a limb and making money with non-alc, or trying to make money with non-alc. And again, like, I just could not, there were no such things as non-alcoholic bottle shops. And the booze-free bar concept existed in Sands Bar and Listen Bar in New York City. So that was basically the landscape. So it wasn't like I foresaw that something was coming, but even in these small pieces in my life, like knowing some beverage founders, doing this Sands Bar pop-up, noticing the DC area very slowly starting to catch up a little bit, I was like, I want to do something like what I did for the Sobriety Collective, but for the non-alc movement. And I kept tripping up over details, but Chris was just like, don't let perfect get in the way of good. Just launch something. I did. And that was in November 2019. And then obviously we know what happened in 2020, but really for those first 6 months of having the platform, there was no map. There was no map. Yeah.
So for those people who don't know, who had never been on that site, hard to imagine, but they're
hard to imagine. No, just kidding.
Describe in a nutshell what it is today.
Yeah. So Zero Proof Nation, as it exists today, is a global non-alc resource hub. It boasts a global map of alcohol-free retailers and booze-free bars, any kind of NA, non-alc forward hospitality. That's kind of the sort of the crowning jewel that people come to the site for. But there's also a very robust beverage directory featuring beverage brands from all over the world, and a couple of other additional resources.
Not just a directory. Yeah. I have to say, like, give you credit. I can go on that website and I can like look at the directory, but then also get descriptors and also get, information about what this is and what it isn't, and how I might drink it. And it's so much more than just it's not a Yellow Pages, right? It's a full-on resource.
I wanted it to be kind of like a living encyclopedia. I wanted there to be some kind of definition, but also context around it. So while I don't have that for every beverage brand, I do write reviews that go on my Substack newsletter. But certainly with the map, I wanted to create listings that weren't just the place and a pin and a map. I wanted to give people a little bit of context of like what this place is, who might have started it, who might have founded it, any kind of relevant information that they'd want to see. And then with the idea that takes them to that place's website or Instagram, they can learn more and discover more. And ultimately, if they want to, visit in real life, if they're able to. But I just wanted to be able to create context for people and options for people.
So what was the hardest thing about building in a space that didn't fully exist yet?
Yeah. I think, hindsight is always 2020 or even sharper than 2020, but it definitely felt like an uphill battle sometimes. And by the way, still does. Just different challenges. And you adapt to those challenges. And then there are new challenges that are placed in front of you, or that sometimes you create not meaning to. I think the biggest challenge was having people understand what the relevance of all of this was. Like, why should we care about this movement, or what is there a movement? Why should we care about, the very few people who are going to want non-alcoholic options on a menu? People thought at the time that only sober people drink non-alcoholic beverages. Well, I think we know that sober people are actually in the minority here. And if you identify as sober, you might have a different kind of recovery journey, but whatever that means to you, you might not want to consume certain beverages. Perhaps they remind you of something that you just don't want to go down that path. And so different sober people will drink different types of beverages, but really the bulk of the people who are driving this movement forward in terms of dollars and sales, not necessarily in terms of cultural influence, but the bulk of the people that drink these beverages also drink alcohol. They just alternate. This is a term now called zebra striping. They are becoming more mindful of their habits, which either that means that, like, okay, well, I drink a cocktail once a week or twice a week. I'm aware of that. It's my indulgence, but I don't go beyond that. They're just like putting into words what they're actually doing, being aware of their habits.
I saw a statistic last year that said that 80% of the non-alcoholic beverages were purchased by people who do drink.
Yeah. Yeah, which is really kind of fascinating to think about. And the way I drank, I didn't leave anything in my glass or in the glass next to me. I didn't know whose it was, but for someone to
that would
just
be alcohol abuse,
right,
to leave something
right.
behind.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's exactly. And so, yeah, there are just people that drink less alcohol and want to have options during the week, or want to have options within the same session that don't take them out of the social equation, but are able to ultimately better their health and better the environment that they're in. Like, no one drunk people all the time.
Okay, so let's take this back to you. So in the early days, you're building this thing, you have a vision, but people don't necessarily even understand what it is or who it's for. What kept you going? How did you move that ball forward in this mist?
Well, I'm a Taurus, and some
Me
people,
too.
you are too. Many people say Tauruses are stubborn, and I can be stubborn, but I can also be very open to feedback. But where it matters, I think my sheer stubbornness, um, combined with this almost selfish desire to build what I wanted because I wanted it. I wanted a resource hub so I wouldn't have to go fragment every single Google search and, find things. And this was pre-chat GPT, which, even I'm guilty of using now for outsourcing some of my own thinking. I mean, that's embarrassing, but it's what we're doing now. And there was no chat GPT for the first, well, let's just say 3.5 to 4 years of the platform's existence. So I did every single piece of research manually. And I found it to be almost not a game, but very gamified. Like, I enjoyed the challenge of researching and trying to find new things and putting it all under one roof so that I could use that resource later. And I thought, well, if I'm using it, there are probably other people like me who want to use it. And I don't really know how it happened, but I just kind of became a subject matter expert very accidentally. And people people reached out to me and had questions, and some call me grandma on Instagram because I've been around for a while. Um, but yeah, I mean, Instagram now to me can feel very sort of performative or super branded, and I don't love that. But I will say that I developed a lot of close friendships through that platform and was able to expand my own um my own sobriety and my own sort of identity as an entrepreneur, as a woman entrepreneur too. And I was able to find a lot of beverage brands through Instagram too. And then would just back when DMs weren't so automated, like I would reach out to different brands or different people and introduce myself and ask to feature them, at no cost to them. I just wanted people to learn about the beverage or learn about this bar or learn about this bottle shop. And soon enough, everyone, I mean, it's an exaggeration. Not everyone knows me, but many people in the industry just started to recognize that I was in many ways like the connector. Oh, you know Laura? Oh, I know Laura. Laura knows you. So um a lot of in the like I said in the beginning, I wasn't always aware of where it was going or what I was building. And the thing that kept me going was stubbornness, some resilience, and just the desire to build what I wanted. And then it sort of took on a life of its own. It kind of became a living thing in and of itself. Um, and in many ways, it's like my baby. So I want to keep it going.
And it's it's an amazing baby. Um, as an entrepreneur myself, and as somebody who is much newer, I'm not newer in sobriety, but newer to being a part of this movement. Um, I often wonder how it is for people like you who see newer people coming on the scene, maybe doing something that is similar, or maybe doing something that is exactly like, or how what is your headspace around that?
Ooh, you ask the tough questions, Marky. Um, well, sometimes sometimes it can hurt the ego if we see something similar to what we've built. And by we, I mean me. Like sometimes it can hurt my ego if I see another map out there or um, another platform that is trying to do what Zero Proof Nation does. And I'll let myself wallow for a very short time, but then I think, well, they can do what they're doing, but ultimately no one's going to be able to deliver what I have built in the words that I have. Like it's I think that I think the more resources, just like the more beverages. I mean, if every beverage founder thought, well, there's another beverage that's like mine, should I still start it? Or if every doctor thought that, or every lawyer thought that. So, like, we're always going to have competition. But I think the unique thing about this movement and this industry in particular is how collaborative it is. There are a lot of
Mhm.
collaborations, a lot of co-opetition, if you want to call it that, like cooperative competition or collaboration. Like people want to work together while also building their own thing. So if someone else built a map and there have been other apps or maps and similar things, I think that's great because they have a different audience that's going to discover them. That same audience might not discover me. Um, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to find options. So ultimately, it's in the service of the person who is wanting to make changes in their life, and I think that that's a good thing. And my ego, you know, it's just my ego.
Girl, I
You
hear
bounce
you.
back, you bounce back, you do. And
I do.
yeah, it's just
I feel like that's such a great answer because it's so true. And I know, for me, in my day job, I'm a speaker coach and I work in a very like small sliver industry. And there are other speaker coaches in that same industry that we're all friends. We refer to each other when I know like my area of genius isn't one thing, but somebody else's is. And yet there's that moment when somebody new comes onto the scene and I'm like, what?
yeah,
And then I realized, no, the people who are right to work with me are going to work with me, and the people who are right to work with this new person are going to work with them, and that's all for the greater good. But there
right.
is that moment. There's that moment, and I 100% agree with you in this alcohol-free space, particularly for people for whom alcohol has been a challenge, whether themselves or they've seen it in a family member or a close friend. We all of us have this higher hurt, and we
Yeah.
all of us want what's best for the next individual to come in contact with us. And
Yeah.
I think when we lean into that, our theme for last year's Amplify conference was Together We Can Do More.
Hmm.
And when we lean into that, we can become bigger and more of. And I think that, listening to your story about building this at a time when this didn't even exist, Chris Marshall building his first ever alcohol-free bar when that didn't even exist, like
I mean, people laughed, sure.
absolutely. And but somebody has to start, but
Yeah.
that's not enough. It's the people who come behind us that make it into a movement. And yeah,
Mhm.
you were one of the first. And yeah, he was one of the first. But how proud you must be to see people coming up now doing this similar type of things. The
Yeah,
fact that there's even that awareness, that even that desire, that just must be a moment
absolutely.
of sitting back and just going, I can't believe that this is where we are today.
Yeah, I mean it's everything that I wanted, which is was always to have a more inclusive hospitality scene, to be included in the conversation, to be included at the table. That's all I ever wanted. I didn't want to feel othered because I wasn't drinking alcohol in that situation. Um, and it's a subject for a whole other podcast or a whole season of podcasts. Um, why alcohol is so normalized, but it's becoming less so. And you're right. We paved a path. We walked a path as we paved it, or we paved it as we walked it. I mean, there wasn't a path in front of us, and we walked on it anyway until there was one. And it's so heartening to see all these people, whether they're starting beverage brands or bottle shops or bars, or if they're part of that new sobriety movement. You can't have a movement with one person or two people or three people. You can have leaders, but who are they going to lead if there's no one on that movement with them? So it really does take a whole village to get to where we are now. And I think it just, people may look back at this time as the infancy still of
Yep.
a greater cultural shift, but I think we're experiencing a cultural shift that I don't think I had ever anticipated would be possible. But I really do think that alcohol is going the way of the cigarette. Cigarettes aren't eradicated, people still smoke, but there are fewer spaces for them to do that. And there's more of a stigma against people who smoke cigarettes than not, whereas before it used to be vice versa. So, um, again, I don't want to fall into the camp of being a prohibitionist. I don't want to shame people for drinking alcohol. That is not my place. All I want to do is provide options for them and be a good role model for myself and and to others. And if I can achieve those things through what I've built and what I continue to build, then I think that is the mark of success.
That's amazing. As you now stand in the shoes that you're in today with all that you've learned, and I know that there's recently been some shifts in your own thinking and life, what do you see for Laura and for your projects in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, well, as we're recording this, I am finishing up a book proposal, and it's all about the movement. It's like a living history book in some ways, a human interest book in others, a travel book in other ways. It kind of touches on a lot of elements, and I hope that being a published author um, helps increase my footprint, increase my platform, or rather widen my platform. Um, Not necessarily for the ego benefits. Yes, I want those things because I want them. Gosh darn it! But also because I just want to spread this message, this lifestyle. I want it to reach as many people as possible. And if that can be because of my book or because of partnerships that I'm making along the way, um, if it's in service of the greater good, then I want to do it. I don't have necessarily specific 3 to 5 year plans in action or on paper, but I just keep doing what feels instinctive, what feels right, um, what feels good, but also what fills my cup. And I can tell that not only, I mean, my dad calls me an influencer, but in the truest way of like culturally influencing. Like he's like, you're a cultural influencer. He's like, I don't care however many followers you have, whatever that even means. He's like, you've helped influence culture. And that feels like a huge deal to me. So I know that my own journey, my own loudness about all of this, whether it was, part of the new sobriety movement or part of the non-alc movement, it it has so many ripple effects. And to see my own family members drinking less because of my journey, buying athletic brewing and buying geese and wines on their own because they want something in the house for the weeknights, like, or even
You
the
just named
weekends,
two of my
like,
favorite brands, so there you go.
yeah,
Good
like
choices.
um they always send me pictures when they're at Wegmans or Trader Joe's. Look at the non-alc section here and look at it here. And my parents are my biggest fans and my biggest support
Oh,
system. And I'm very grateful that my story is not only mine in the sense that I bettered my life, but that I also um share it with very special people like my family. So I don't even know where I was going with that, but
I don't know, but I'm falling in love with you more all the time because like you're a person.
yeah,
You know,
that's
people look at you as as this leader, as this like Laura, like this international judge and all the things. And you're a person, and I
I'm a
just love that
person
about you.
and I burp like a lot sometimes. So like I try to keep it as real as possible. And it's funny that people might see me that way, but I see others that way. So I think even Hollywood A-list Hollywood stars like still have their own idols. Um,
That's right.
so I'm just
Who's your
happy to be
idol
part of this. Who's my idol?
in
Um,
this space or in general?
well, I'm very grateful to be so close to Chris. We're great friends. He is often my inspiration, and I am often his, or at least like in the beginning of our building journeys. I love I love what Ruby Warrington has done, helping like, shift culture with words and with language really does matter. And I love what Tawny Laura has done. And she's a good friend of mine. She's also my book coach. And she's an incredible teacher. And I think what Bill Schufelt and his co-founder John Walker have done creating Athletic Brewing, where it was a super teeny tiny craft brewery in Connecticut. Um, when they started it, I had heard about it the year that they launched, and it was impossible to get their beers. You had to go to Connecticut to do that. And now look where they're international. I mean, it's just fantastic. So I have so many people, Ben Branson, that I wouldn't even say they're my idols. They're just friends that I look up to. Derek Brown, who's a local to DC, and he's an incredible human and an incredible culture shifter. So I'm just really lucky to be among such amazing people. And I'm grateful that people see me that way too, because it does feel good to be
Yeah,
recognized for my efforts. Um, and I still want to continue making those efforts if it means I get to help more people.
yeah. Okay, there are two more questions for you.
Okay.
Um, I see on now, national news these little bits about people drinking less, and now they're also starting to tell the story about the effect that it's having on the restaurant and hotel industry.
Yeah.
Because we know that 60 to 80% of the profits of restaurants and hotel restaurants are from alcohol.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with Jonathan Sawyer. He's a celebrity chef. Came on our podcast, and we sort of unpacked some of that. And he said, I said, well, why, if you charge the same amount for a non-alcoholic bottle of wine as an alcoholic bottle of wine, like, why aren't you still able to make the same profit? And he said, well, with people who are drinking, they'll come in and they'll have a cocktail as they sit down and look at their menus, And then they'll order a bottle or two of wine throughout the course of their eating. And then they might linger over desserts and another drink. Whereas people who don't drink will have a drink
Mm.
or share a bottle amongst the table of a non alcoholic option. And so, just by sheer volume, that's becoming a problem. So, I guess my question to you is sort of as you look at this landscape of messaging, of being more inclusive, of having options, of the effect that it's having culturally and shifting people's perception of what is good for us and healthy, but also now, follow the money, this other challenge that's going to be hitting for the restaurants and hotels. What do you think people are getting right about the messaging of introducing alcohol free beverages? And where do you think that maybe there's some misses?
You do ask the heavy hitter, the heavy hitters. These
I
are great.
want to
I
know
mean,
these
well,
things.
it's Jonathan brought up a really good point, and that's often the case with alcohol is that the more you drink it, the more everything loosens up a little bit, and the more likely you are going to want to keep that feeling going and keep ordering more. Whereas with the non-alc beverages, they don't do that, and I think
It's a
we've
tasty
attributed.
fluid.
I'm sorry, it's a
It's a
tasty
tasty
fluid.
fluid.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a tasty fluid. I think we as a culture have attributed a lot of meaning toward the fact that alcohol is a drug and it changes like we're ascribing value to the ethanol itself, like to the shape shifting abilities that alcohol has, what for better or for worse. I think there still is this hurdle, this big boulder in the path where people aren't sure how to position non-alc beverages because they don't deliver that same effect. And of course, an alcoholic bottle of wine, a traditional bottle of wine, isn't just expensive because it does something to you. It's also expensive because it has provenance. It belongs to a certain part of the world. It's aged for so many years. I mean, there are things that matter in alcoholic beverage culture, spirits as well. Beers. I mean, beers not as much with like aging, but certainly there are certainly parts of each sort of beverage category in the alcoholic realm um, that have subcultures and that have inherent value in their own way, regardless of alcohol content. I think shifting gears to non-alc, a lot of these beverages may not have that same kind of cultural provenance or the terroir or the aging, but some of them do. So some of them, for instance, let me just illustrate with an example. There's a winery in Austria that is an award-winning winery and vineyard that makes traditional wine, and then they de-alcoholize some of their top awarded wines. They de-alcoholize on property, and they're called Geronimo. Their zero alcohol wine is called Geronimo, and then they have their main vineyard. And so in that way, you've got these wines that have this provenance to Austria, that has the story it tells with the grapes and where the age is from. The age is, you know what I mean, like the
Yeah.
how old it might be. And then so it's still that wine, but then it goes through this additional process of de-alcoholizing and then retaining all of the flavors and aromas and the story that comes with wine. And there are more and more wineries that are doing that because people are seeing that non-alc is the wave of the future.
Growing.
It's a good business decision. Um, and it's still very much a challenge in more traditional hospitality, to to change people's minds about why should non-alc cost the same as alc, for instance, if it's not delivering any kind of effects or whatever. But that's not I don't think truly the reason why many people drink in traditional hospitality settings. I mean, I know why I drank, but I wasn't, I was different. That people often want to pair something with their meals, or they want to match their beverage with the vibe of whatever the night is, or what. There are so many different reasons, and you can apply that same reasoning and logic to non-alc. If I want to go to a sports game, I'll order an alcohol-free beer. I'll have an Athletic or a Heineken Zero or whatever. Um, this is a very roundabout answer because I haven't even gotten to the answer yet, which is that um, it is an uphill battle in a lot of different parts of the hospitality industry, because people are still having this disconnect between charging more for alcohol free if it doesn't have alcohol in it. And that's not the way we should be looking at this. It's not about it's not just lack of alcohol. Many of these beverages have botanicals that are sourced globally, that are made by hand. It's like I guess the difference between a Gucci purse and a fake Gucci purse, like a lot of these beverages are incredibly craft, and and should be priced accordingly, whether they deliver a result like an effect or not. And I think there's just more training that needs to be done in hospitality settings, not to poo-poo anyone, or not to slap people's wrists, but to allow them to see that they can charge more for these beverages, and that they are not just for people who don't drink alcohol. They're for people who want to space out their nights, who want to not have to call an Uber at the end of it, or who want to, not just have a drink, but I'm driving and I'm not going to order anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but if I have a traditional alcoholic beverage, then I can switch to alcohol free. And if they have enough options on the menu, I can keep those coming. So I think there is this misconception, and I'm sure Jonathan sees it. We're talking about that celebrity chef again. He sees it more than I do because he's in that industry. But I don't necessarily think that people who are ordering non-alc will only order one drink. They're less likely to order the whole menu, but they might order a couple of drinks. And if there are enough options on the menu for them, then they'll keep that going. I think that answered some of your questions, but the larger piece, Margie, is that there are still rules we're rewriting the rules as we go along. And I think if you wanted to distill it, wink, wink, down to the very essence, it's that everyone should be, I hate shoulding on people, but everyone could stand to be more open-minded about where this new hospitality is going. Include non-alc along with alc. Don't put it as an afterthought on the back of the menu. Whether you have things mixed together, oftentimes people don't really know how to work with that. But have the ABV, the alcohol by volume percentage, clearly marked next to the drinks. I'm
I
seeing,
gotta say, you just
yeah,
said something that for me is such a very few things irk me regularly. This one irks me regularly that I go to a new restaurant and I'm searching. I'm literally searching the drink menu, trying to see, is there something I can drink. I go to the local grocery store and I'll go down the wine aisle searching where might
yeah,
there be an alcohol free thing. Like, stop. I stop hiding from me. Why do I
yes,
have to search so hard to find the things? I'm like you. I'm all about free choice, but don't make me play Where's Waldo.
yeah, yeah. And I think there are some places that are really starting to get it, and it's exciting to watch those places grow, and it's exciting to watch some of those sub industries like cruise lines are starting to get it, where we never thought we would see momentum on cruise lines, but gosh, they're starting to adopt alcohol free programs. Um, and it's fantastic. And regular grocery stores, they have non-alc sections now, although they don't always make it easy to find. You have to
Mhm.
go into the lifestyle alternative wine section, which you wouldn't necessarily know, um but more and more distributors are carrying things, more and more independent. We need independent shops, independent bottle shops, just as much as we need grocery carrying these things. That is the way everyone benefits, because there's always going to be a mom and pop restaurant, and there's always going to be a chain restaurant. There's always going to be a grocery store and a specialty store, and these things coexist together. But there has been, there have been a lot of businesses in the non-alc industry, whether they're brands, beverage brands, or bottle shops or bars, that have had to close their doors because it's just difficult to compete with some of the big guns out there. And I hate to see anyone have to shut their doors. At the same time, it's not a but, it's an and. This is just how I think the economy works. Like, there's longevity, and but within that there's openings and closings and openings and closings, and you still always have two gas stations across the street from each other. Like, why? I don't know, but maybe your future guest will have an answer to
Northbound
that.
and southbound.
I never could understand why. I guess you just need, yeah, you need the option, so that however you're coming on the road, you can find it. Um, and that's kind of a perfect analogy. Like, wherever you're going, if you're going to a grocery store, or if you're going to a specialty shop because you like shopping small, you like supporting local, um, there should be options wherever you are, so that you never have to feel like you're searching. You never have to feel like you're a burden to someone to ask all these questions. Um, yeah, but there's still a lot of work to do. So don't worry, I'm not packing up my bags yet.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yeah.
So, Laura, for the person who's listening who feels like, yeah, I want this to be better too. I want things to get better too. What can we do? What can an individual person do?
Yeah. Well, individuals can do a lot. And I mean, I did a lot, and I don't know how I did it, to be honest. But it didn't happen overnight. It took many years of individual knocking on doors, proverbial doors, and literal doors. So someone can make an impact in their own community, in their own city, in their own state. Um, you can start at your favorite restaurant. Does your favorite restaurant have non-alcoholic options? If they do, they clearly got the memo from you. Yay. But if they don't, how can you inspire them to add options to their menu? How can you inspire them to be creative when they talk to their distributors? Like, what kind of non-alc options do you carry? Like, um, talk to the restaurant staff about the fact that this is not harming anyone. In fact, it's helping the check be larger. Like, you're going to have a larger guest check. So there are a lot of things that someone can do, even at the most local, most hyper local level. And then if you wanted to do something even beyond that, you can always start your own business. Or you can start your own thing, whether that's a podcast like Margie's, a website like mine. You can do apps, you can do maps, you can. I love seeing all these new entrepreneurs come onto the larger movement stage, and see what they're building and see how they're impacting their local communities. And I think, just like a rising tide does lift all boats, like we're doing this together. One person can make a huge, huge impact on their own community, and that has a ripple effect.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Everything about this conversation has just filled me with so much joy. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have?
um, I don't think so. I think we covered so much, so many like good gems here. My email, I'm super old school. I like emails. People can DM me, but I like getting an email. So people can send me a note if you want to talk about this industry, if you just want to talk about favorite beverages, like, please put my email address in the show notes. It's laura@zeroproofnation.com. And if you're just learning about Zero Proof Nation for the very first time today, I'm so excited that you're here. And if you've been a longtime fan, I love you just the same, even more. But yeah, my hope is that there are just people who are open to discovering and traveling, even if that's just within their own neighborhood, their own city. I hope that it sparks a newfound interest um,
Oh,
in this type of hospitality.
I love that. Well, I just want to thank you so much. And I just kind of want to close with some reflections that I have. Because there's something so powerful about your story. It reminds me real time that movements don't start as movements. They start
Yeah.
as individual decisions, like quiet ones, often before there's language for them, before there's community around them, before there's even a clear path forward. And that's what Laura did. She didn't just make a different choice, she paid attention to what was going on and got curious about it and then built something around it. And I think that that's the part that's so easy to overlook because we don't think of our own personal decisions that way. We think of them just as ours. But what this conversation shows is that sometimes the way you choose to live can actually shape the environments around you, the places that you go, the options that exist, the conversations people are having. So if you have found yourself wishing things were different, more inclusive, or more thoughtful, or more aligned with the way that you want to live, maybe this is your reminder that you can have more influence than you think, even in the smallest ways. Thank you so much for listening to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. And if this conversation made you think differently about the spaces that you move through, please share it with somebody that you love to experience those spaces with. See you next week.